As someone who works for themselves, nobody told me what it would be like to buy a house, especially not the costs involved with investing in real estate. So, in today's video, we're going to explore what it looks like for a real person in today's economy and today's housing market to actually buy a house in a high cost of living area. And actually, since we came up with the topic for this video, I've actually bought a second house. So, I have a lot of experience with recent housing conditions that we're going to talk about here. Hi, welcome or welcome back. I'm Christina Scalera, the founder of D-Commerce and the Secretly Successful Mastermind, and I'm all about how to get your neurospicy introverted self into a life that you love, mostly through creating passive income, investments, businesses, different opportunities, especially when it comes to creating your own digital products. So if you want to work when you want to and not because you have to, then you're in the right spot, and make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're new here, welcome. So as someone who is self-employed, I really didn't think that there were many options for me as far as a mortgage goes. And I will say that this became immensely more easy when I met my husband, but not for the reason you think. So first of all, my husband is in the Navy, which means that if you would like to go look up his public salary, that is your prerogative. It's available out in the world because he's a government employee. Now, the main thing that he and I were able to do together because of his employment was get a house using a VA loan. So VA stands for Veterans Affairs, and the special thing about a VA loan that a lot of other loans don't have, although some do, you can find this even if you're not a veteran or someone who's currently enlisted in the military. So just as an example, even if you're not in the military, maybe you qualify for a USDA loan. There's certain income limits and you have to buy in certain areas, but they definitely don't have to be as rural as you think. And they also, like the VA loan, allow you to put no money down. So when it came to buying our house, that's exactly what we did. We used a VA loan. We didn't put any money down. We had to pay the VA loan funding fee and the closing costs, and we were able to secure a mortgage rate around 4.8%. So that was pretty good given the fact that we bought at the top of the housing market in a high cost of living area near where he's now stationed in Washington state. While houses here are definitely more expensive than the median house price in the US, they are not as bad as being directly in Seattle or like the directly surrounding metroplex. We're just slightly outside of that. So that really helped with some of the housing affordability when we came to look at options, as well as buying in May, which, there was a time crunch for all of us out there who were buying last spring as interest rates were hiking up. We were all trying to beat the next week's rate that was coming out. And so I feel pretty good about our rate. Obviously, hearing my friends talk about their like 2 point whatever rates makes me a little jealous. But all things being said and done, we did get into a pretty solid house in a neighborhood that is highly coveted, and the houses in this neighborhood sell in hours. So I feel pretty good about the house that we did buy, and I did understand that even though I was a first-time buyer, I really tracked the real estate market around here, and I understood that we were buying at the top of the market, and putting no money down on a house would typically be kind of risky, except for my business income that at the time I had two businesses. It was incredibly stable in both businesses and only growing. And I felt really comfortable about this, especially considering our rental options were not great and barely less expensive than our mortgage was going to be. Now, this video is about how much it costs to buy a house and all the associated costs. So when we factor all that in, I'm sure it was very, very, very much so a better financial decision to rent. However, we are already moving so frequently with his job being in the military that I just didn't want to have to be subject to anybody kicking us out because they were selling the house, which was happening a lot in this area given, the whole housing market. And I also wanted to start building a real estate portfolio. So we actually, I guess, I don't know what the right word would be, but we underbought. That's the term I've been using. We qualified for about double what we spent, which great, that's fine. We certainly could have gone up to the top of the budget, but I'm really glad we didn't in hindsight for a lot of reasons, namely because then I was also able to buy a second home in Colorado just 9 months after we bought this first house. So let's dive into some of the costs though that we've run into, and I might be able to cover some of the Colorado house too, because they're two very different homes. One is about 20, 25 years old here in a very, very wet environment. I mean, literally downpouring this morning and for the last, I don't know, 7 days straight. And Colorado is in just about the exact opposite environment. You know, sunshine 312 days a year, very, very, very dry, you know, so much so that your skin cracks. And it's a new construction home. So it's brand new. There's no one that's ever lived in it except for me now. So here in Washington, single family home. There in Colorado, it's it's not a multifamily, but it's kind of like a 2-house property. So I will dive into what some of the costs are that have been associated with that and a little bit more about how we were able to pay for these things, because I know that as a person who is self-employed, when they ask you that on the mortgage forms, things start to get a little bit hairy. So the first thing that my content team wanted me to talk about here was any kind of like closing inspection type of costs that we encountered in buying this house. And you'll be happy to know that we bought this house sight unseen, without an inspection. Over asking, all the things that May 2022 had in store for pretty much anyone who was buying in a desirable area. And luckily we did have a good seller who was conscientious of the market. She did put a new roof on this house right before we bought, so we did know it had a new roof. We knew some of the things going into it because she had done not a whole inspection, but she had some of the issues looked at and disclosed that on the seller disclosure. So I appreciate that she did that. And it also helped us to feel really good about the offer that we did make. And then, of course, once we got possession of the property, we did do an inspection. That way we knew everything that we were getting into, even though we couldn't back out anymore. Luckily, nothing really showed up on the inspection. So it's just really been me nitpicking at this house and creating new things to spend money on. Except for one. So I pulled up my Airtable because, you know, of course I have an Airtable of everything that I've been spending money on in this house. And I'll go through some of the expenses just so that you can start to see what we had to encounter. And I'll flag it if it was something like we really had to do, or if it was like, you know, Christina had to do it. So the first thing that we did was we tore out the LVP floors in here and reinstalled more LVP. They were just really disgusting. Like, there were some sticky spots that I just could not get out. I mean, we had the house professionally cleaned and they still were there. It grossed me out to no end. And with my OCD, I'm kind of particular about how the floor feels on my feet. Yes, I know I can wear slippers. In fact, I wear these sparkly things like all day long, but you know, I don't know. I felt like I needed to do that. So all in all, we ended up spending about 12 grand on the floors between trying to DIY it ourselves and then realizing that was too much. We had to hire someone. So the floors themselves came from Floret and we spent about 7 grand on that and then about 5,500 on the installation. Speaking of floors, we also got epoxy in our garage, which yes, I know I could have DIY'd as well, but it just felt like something that I would rather hire out given the concrete etching and all this other stuff. So we ended up spending about $3,000, $2,900 to be exact. I ended up getting new valves, which this one I feel like I just got totally ripped off. I just didn't know. I had someone come in and look at some of the plumbing. There was some like little tiny things that they had to fix up. And then the guy took a look at things and he's like, oh, you really need these like new quarter turn valves, blah, 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 blah. In hindsight, I totally probably could have even put those on myself. And I feel like I was overcharged regardless of doing it myself or him doing it. So that was another $2,300 out the door. Again, that probably didn't need to be done, but in hindsight, I just was trying to make sure that I didn't have any leaks in the house or anything that would pop up on an emergency basis, because when we bought this house, we bought it knowing that we're going to leave in a few years to the next duty station and rent this house out. So we want it really, really solid for our renters. I guess I should have mentioned that earlier. That's something that we've been doing with every improvement in mind, is like, how could we make this renter proof? Because I've rented my whole life. I've had dogs. So I know what renter proof, or, you know, as close to it as you can get, looks like. The next thing we had to do, which we actually had to do this, it wasn't something that was just nice to have, was we re-vinyled the bathroom. So they had sheet vinyl in them and it was original to the house. The previous owner had put peel and stick tile on top, so it didn't look so bad on the tour, the FaceTime tour. But once I got here and I could feel the stickiness and just see it, it looked terrible. And I have no idea what she did to our primary bedroom floor, but it was like not even peel and stick. I have no idea what it was. It was like literally glued down and not even close to each other. Like there were gaps, so there was water getting in between the gaps. It was just a mess. So we had to pull all that up, redo our subfloor in that bathroom, and put new vinyl down. So thank goodness that we were exchanging the vanities and ran into this issue, because I probably would have just left that there if I really didn't care, and we would have had a major issue later, including the floor underneath the tub. So I'm really, really glad that we did end up checking all that out and getting some new stuff, even though it did cost a lot of money. So that was $2,700 to have the new sheet vinyl that included materials and installation costs put in. Then, this is all Christina. I wanted new bathroom vanities. This was a very builder grade house. It felt very builder-ish to me, but like 2000s builder. So like the worst kind, right? Lots of oak, lots of like Formica countertops, things like that. Just wasn't the vibe for me. So I decided to rip out all the vanities, and they were actually built in. In hindsight, I would have just replaced the countertops, knowing what I know now, because when we replaced the vanities, of course, the ones that I ordered, which are beautiful ones, like a concrete one, and then the other one is like a marble vanity top, like this beautiful, huge, like white vanity. Again, I know that this is for renters, but I've rented with marble before, and as long as you're not a jerk about it, like it actually holds up pretty well. And I think the etching and all the like natural things that happen with marble is actually pretty nice. So I know that was a little bit of a splurge, but I was happy that we did that. In hindsight though, I would have just like done a new marble, or probably not marble, some other kind of like marble-esque looking top on the countertops, and that would have been it. Regardless, the vanities set us back $5,900. The bathroom mirrors that had to go over the vanities, because of course I had to rip out the builder grade ones with the little plastic things that held them onto the wall. That was another $800. The bathroom lighting was another $300 or $400. The bathroom remodel, so the actual work, which we thought was going to be like, we move a couple things so that the vanities fit and that was it. It ended up being almost $12,000, which is just insane and something that makes me want to cry when I think about it. My biggest regret there is I hired more or less a handyman, like someone that was kind of like a contractor light, who I just found like a friend through a friend, and he seemed fine. He seemed really competent. The work that he did was pretty good, so I'm not, disappointed in the work, but I do wish I'd gone with a contractor now that we have redone our kitchen. And I realized how much better like a reputable contractor that I found off of Google, not through a referral, but like just someone random, they did an excellent job. So anyway, lesson learned there. That was an expensive one. We had to get a new water heater shutoff valve. That was like an emergency type of thing, because our brand new water heater, it was only 1.5 or 2 years old, actually rusted out on the bottom and it exploded all over our garage. And luckily it was just the garage. It wasn't like our house, but that was another $500. We had to get a new toilet during the remodel. That was actually a Christina addition. We didn't have to get a new toilet, but of course I got the nicest Toto, whatever. So it was $450 for that. We got a new water heater that, because it was on an emergency basis and it was all new, like water heater installation, permit, everything, was $2,400. Our crawl space, we did insulation down there just because like the house was really, really drafty. And when I was doing a lot of research, again, this is probably why you want to talk to more professionals than just like Google or the internet. I think this is a good analogy for business. Like this is the difference between getting business coaching off of YouTube versus like talking to me directly, is you're going to get a more customized solution, and just in the end, you're going to save yourself a lot of money and time. So I didn't do that. I just installed the insulation and paid $4,000 for that. And it actually turns out that that was completely worthless, because the insulation company told us, you have a lot of standing water down there, and we actually needed a totally different solution. So $4,000 just like gone. See you later, never to be seen again, because the solution that we actually needed, which is a full crawl space conditioning, and yes, we actually needed this. I like, now that I've been like ripped off a million times, I feel like I really looked into this, and the company that we went with, while they are definitely more expensive than their competition. It's kind of a thing because like we live on an island, it's hard to get to. It's a multi-day, thing that they have to do to install lots of different whatever. We're going to get to that in a second, but that is actually, going to be even better than the insulation, and we never even needed the insulation to begin with. So there you go, lesson learned. You can, shade and fraud, enjoy my sadness in spending that money. So we also did the duct repairs down there. Again, not needed because of the other crawl space work that we're going to do. That was $700. We did a full kitchen refresh, so we decided not to rip the cabinets out and put new ones in. To do so would have been about $25,000 to $30,000. New countertops, new sink, everything, right? You saw how much the bathroom costs. Now imagine like 3 times that because of all the new cabinetry and everything that you want for the kitchen. It's a bigger space, nicer space, etc. So what we decided to do instead is to refresh the kitchen. The former owner had hand painted the oak cabinets, so they were really bad. Not just bad paint job, but also like this like oil from the wood seeping through because she didn't prime it. So like cautionary tale for you DIYers out there. Anyway, it looked terrible. It just, it wasn't sticky or anything, but it just looked so bad. And it wasn't something that we could ever resell the house with or even give over to a renter. Like I would not have been comfortable with the kind of person who would have been okay living in a house like that. That really did need to get redone, and I'm super thrilled with the work. They exchanged the handles out because I, just go by like Vanna White and close all the cabinets. And when there's no soft close on it, it's just like bam, 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 bam. My husband, he actually, he needs to sleep. He's got a little a little thing wrong with his sleep thanks to the Navy. He can't handle that. So we had to get the soft close. I'm really glad we did that. We added, we painted them all the colors that I wanted. It looks really, really beautiful. I'll try to remember to put a picture up here so that you can see what it looks like. And honestly, I'm pretty thrilled with how it all turned out. And that was all $8,600. So that's what that came to. And then we added an electrical outlet for the stove. So that was $1,800 because the electrician had to go again in this damn crawl space underneath the house and add a little thing on our circuit. And that was a lot of work and a lot of materials. So that was how much that was. We decided to do electric instead of gas because, again, making it more renter friendly, we wanted to have an electric stovetop. I might even do an induction, which I know is overkill for a renter, but I live here now, so I'm kind of trying to balance the interests of like future people living here versus me, and it's my house. Oh, we haven't even gotten to the good part yet. So the crawl space waterproofing, sub pump, all the drainage, everything that it needs, all the landscaping, blah, 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 blah. This doesn't include a French drain, by the way. That still has to come. That's going to be $31,000. So that was an expense that I knew we could run into. Growing up, I remember we lived in a house that had flooding issues because of a basement and sump pump, and I remember how expensive that was for my parents. And here I was. So that was something that, again, could we have lived with this? Could we have sold the house without it? Yes. But I am concerned that with the water that builds up down there, that it could have mold. And that's the number one thing when I had allergy tests done. That's the number one thing that I am allergic to. So it would deeply and every day affect the quality of my life and how well I'm able to even do this job. So that's just not worth it to me. I mean, if I cannot work because I'm constantly like stuffed up or just lethargic or whatever, that's not going to work for me. So in order to keep living here, I felt like that was an improvement we needed to make. And then finally, our fence is falling down because, if you know anything about Washington winds, especially out here on the islands, you know that fences don't last long. So that's another 13 grand that we'll have to spend this August. The grand total of all of this comes to $105,488. So $105,488. That is how much money we've spent on our primary house to date, not including the mortgage, not including inspection or closing costs or anything like that. So if you're wondering how expensive it is to do the HGTV thing and get a fixer-upper, and ours wasn't even a fixer-upper, it was like, could we make this like slightly better? Like that's what you're looking at in terms of service and, just things adding up, including emergency repairs like the water heater that we had to go through. So keep that in mind as you are going to buy a house. Just know that if you are buying a house and it doesn't have the kitchen that you love, you might want to ask yourself if that is a $30,000 decision you're willing to blow off. So obviously I learned a lot from this experience, and when I went to buy the second house that we have now in Colorado, I went new construction all the way. I'm like, you know what? All I have to do on this is make sure everything works. We were able to get an inspection because the market had cooled off enough to allow us to have time to do something like that. And we were still able to customize it to our liking because it was brand new. So I got to pick out all the window coverings and the backsplash for the kitchen and the bathrooms. And even though I hate carpet, and I will never have carpet in any house I live in, I guess technically I will, because we are adding it to the stairs in the Colorado house just because I have 100-something pound German Shepherd mix, and he has torn up the edges of those stairs. So I can't even imagine when we rent the other house out, what their dogs are going to do to that if they have any kind of similar dogs. And of course I'm letting them live there with their animals. Actually, that's like a whole nother video I could do about dogs, because we were able to rent to people that have dogs that, you know, they have this like special connection with their dogs like I do with mine. I feel like we actually got way better renters than we would have gotten if we were like, no pets, no dogs. Okay, so in addition to what I've already covered here, there's just a couple other things to keep in mind, namely closing costs. Those are going to add up very quickly. A good rule of thumb with closing costs, I don't know what your realtors are telling you, but in my experience buying these two properties in the past year, closing costs for these properties, and again, remember the VA funded one, that one's gonna be a lot more expensive than like a typical closing cost because I had to pay a VA funding fee. But with these houses, I found that putting 2 to 3% aside for the closing costs was more than enough. Now, that didn't include the down payment, but that was what I needed to bring to the table in order to give an earnest money deposit, to make sure the sellers knew I was serious, and also to cover any kind of title companies, things like that. Remember, I live in title company states, not attorney closing states. So it might be different if you're on the East Coast of the United States where they close with an attorney versus a title company. And then finally, if you are buying with a mortgage, you won't really have to worry about this because it will be automatically rolled into your mortgage payment. But you do have homeowners insurance and property taxes, and both of those things are subject to change over time. Namely, the property taxes can start to creep up there, especially in these states that don't have state income tax. So just keep an eye on that and make sure that you budget enough so that you can always keep up with those adjustments. Oh, I forgot. Two final things. So real quick, if you have an HOA, then sometimes that's included in your mortgage payment. Usually you'll just have to pay it every month or every quarter as they require it. And I am actually the they in this circumstance. I am the treasurer of the HOA. So how we went from a renter to owning two homes and being a treasurer of an HOA, I have no idea. But hi, hello, I am that person to my neighborhood now. I don't hope that it is always that way because this was definitely meant to be a temporary thing. But, you know, and then of course the last thing are your moving expenses and new furniture costs, things like that. Don't forget to budget a little bit for fun stuff on top of all the other things you're already spending money on, because I can guarantee whatever new space you move into, there's going to be a storage need that you haven't already thought of or that you don't already have furniture for, and it will make your life so much better, so much easier, improving the quality of your life tenfold if you have the right vehicles to store things in when you arrive at your destination. Just as an example, in this house, we desperately need a bar. It's not that we drink a lot or that we need a lot of alcohol storage, but we definitely don't have any at all. And so we need to install some kind of furniture that solves that need and gets all those things off of our kitchen countertop. So when all is said and done, I definitely don't think that you need to have the same experience that I did. I think I really went overboard in terms of improvements to this house in 1 year. I probably could have spaced that out over the course of several years, right? And had a more reasonable bill of somewhere around a third of that every year. That still would have been a lot, but it wouldn't have been 100 grand in 1 year. Add to all that we also had a wedding last year, and last year was probably the most expensive year of my entire life. This is why I am so grateful that I do work for myself and that my income is only dependent on me and how much I want to release out into the world, how many times I want to launch, how many products I want to sell, how many people I want to reach, and that's all dependent on how much I want to show up. So if you are looking to have a career like that offers you flexibility and freedom, even if if it is extra paperwork when you go to apply for a mortgage, because yes, you're self-employed and they're going to ask you 10 million times for things that they would never ask a W-2 employee spouse, just remember that regardless of what's happening in the greater financial picture or the world, the right time to buy is when it's right for you. So it's not when the loan officer or the realtor or anybody else tells you on Reddit that now is the best time to buy because home prices are low or interest rates are going back down or whatever. The right time to buy is when you need a place to live and you are ready for the freedom and the potential investment qualities that a house and home ownership brings to you. I just wish someone had taken me by the hand and shown me what I showed you in this video and been honest about what they actually spent in their first year of home ownership, because I definitely didn't expect to spend all that, but we did. And I didn't even know that a lot of the things that we ended up fixing on the house were even things you should consider. You know, I only saw what I saw on HGTV, like new kitchens and bathrooms and floors. I had no idea that valves were a thing that I would essentially trade a Chanel bag for. So that's where I wish I had known that some of that money that we had set aside for the house was going to go. I wish I had known that, even though, you know, we didn't have to pay a down payment and we did get a really good deal, I feel like, in hindsight on this house, that, you know, I just wish I had known some of these little more nuanced things that I shared with you today. So if you also enjoyed the nuance of this video, then make sure you're liking, subscribing, sharing this with at least one friend, because it does make a huge difference. And those likes are totally free for you, but these videos cost me hundreds of dollars and lots of time to make, including my team. So when you like it, you give a big thumbs up to all of us, and I know they would appreciate it too. So thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see me cover a little bit more about my real estate journey, I know I didn't really have time to get into the Colorado house right now. Unfortunately, I won't be sharing many pictures or, you know, specific details about the address or location of the homes, just because I like my privacy. I don't want to be doxxed. There's a lot of weird people on the internet. And of course, if you're ready to earn an income all by yourself, dependent totally on you and not on the market, not on a 9-to-5 job, not on layoffs, not on bosses, but only dependent on you and your willingness to work and put yourself out there, then I have lots of resources linked on my website at christinascalera.com, including a free workshop that walks you through how to create your first digital product that you can offer out to your audience and start making money right away. I show you how to do all that and more inside that workshop, so make sure you catch it over at my website. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye, everyone.